Hello everybody, welcome back to Sitn'Crochet, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful crop sweater, which is absolutely beginner friendly and can be worn in so many different styles as the model is about to show you. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more fun and simple tutorials. There is a printable PDF pattern available for this pattern. Find the link in the description below. The materials that you need are your yarn, 4mm hook, your scissors, stitch marker, and that's about it. Let's get into it. This is the yarn that I like to use. I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's from Zambia. It's 100% acrylic and the weight is 50 grams, but then it's too thin for my liking, so that's why I like to use 2 strands together and with a 4mm hook. Just to give you guys an idea of what we're going to be working with, we're going to start by making the front panel, which should look something like this. And for the back panel, which, okay, ignore my drawing, it's clearly rubbish, which looks something like this. And we'll connect these things together, and then once they're connected, we're gonna add the arms and make the ribbing around the neck. So assume this is you, yeah? Oh my goodness. This is you. We're gonna start, oh my goodness, no. Okay, this is you. We're gonna start from, we're gonna make a chain which is gonna measure from our underarm, however long you want it to be. So from this chain, we're gonna work, let's say 3 or 4 normal rows before we start making the increase, which is this section right here. So we're gonna start making that increase for a few rows. Once it's reached the front, our chest, we're gonna chain a chain that's long enough to reach our shoulder, which is right here, this right here, and then we'll work a few normal rows, which should cover our shoulder portion, and then we'll decrease, which is this part right here, and work a few normal rows, and then we'll increase here the same number of rows we decreased this side, work the same number of normal rows we worked on this side, and then we'll decrease, we'll chain the same number of chains that we chained here, and then we'll decrease the number that we increased here, work a few normal rows, and that should make our front portion. And for the back, all we're going to do is what we did here until this part. We're not going to decrease, we're just going to work a whole straight line and decrease on that side. So I have chained 55, and at the bottom of my chain I have left a stitch marker. I've left 10 chains down here because this is where my band is going to be. So I'm gonna add chain 2 to begin my work, and since we're gonna be doing a half double slip stitch, we're gonna yarn over, find our 3rd chain from the hook, which is right here, insert your hook, grab this yarn, pull it through. Now for a half double crochet, this is what we would normally do, but that's not the case. Since it's gonna be a half double slip stitch, we pull our yarn through and slip stitch it through those 2. You yarn over, insert your hook, pull your yarn through. You can just hold these 2 down like this and slip stitch through just like that. Do that again together. Hold this down and slip stitch it like that. How I like to do it, I just like to pull it through and pull it like that. Yarn over, insert my hook, and I knock onto this so that my yarn right here at the first loop is tight. I turn my hook down and I just pull it through just like that. So you go on doing that, and I will meet you once we've reached here. So now that I've reached my stitch marker, I'm just gonna remove it and start on my slip stitch rows. To do a slip stitch, all you do is insert your hook, grab your yarn, and just pull through those 2 loops. Insert your hook and just pull through those 2 loops. And you're gonna do that all the way to the end of your work, and I'll meet you when I get there. So I've worked my slip stitch rows, and now I'm gonna chain 1 and turn my work. And again, we're going to go back with slip stitches into the back loops only until we've reached the 10th, and I will meet you there. So I reached my 10th and I've placed my stitch marker back in there so that I don't get confused on when I'm coming back down. And it's time to go on back with my half double slip stitch. So again, all we're doing is working in the back loops. So you're gonna hold your work upright like this, so until you can see those V's, and we'll be working in the back loops of those. So you're gonna do this for the number of rows that you need, just to cover that portion that we mentioned, your underarm, before we get started on the increase. And I will meet you when I've got my number of rows. So I have just worked 7 normal rows, and I've just gotten started on my 8th row, and this is where now I'm gonna start doing the increase, which is right here at the top of my work. So I will meet you when I get there to show you how we do the increase. So I have got one more V, which is this one right here, to work into. What I'm gonna do is I'll place my first normal half double slip stitch, and since we're increasing, I'll place another one right in there, and then I'll chain 2. I'll turn my work to get started on row 9, and on row 9 we're gonna have to place another increase. So the back loop of the first one, I'll place 2 yet again, and our increase is done. And from here I'm gonna go on down working as I've been doing before. Now I've done a total of 12 rows. All of these are 12 rows, and I have increased for 5 rows, and this is about enough to come from my underarm to around my chest. And now it's time to chain that chain that's gonna reach the top of my shoulder. So I've chained 15 chains to get started on my shoulder portion, and now this is where I'm going to start working the normal rows. I'm going to work a chunk that's enough to fit my shoulder portion. So you're going to do exactly that, and I'll meet you once I've got the chunk that fits my shoulder portion. So I ended up working 9 rows. I was supposed to work 8 rows, but then my 8th row was ending up here, and you want to end down here so that you can start your decrease row to start working on the neck now. So I end up doing 9 rows and I'm working my way back up. However, I won't work all the way up to the top. I have left 7 chains at the top here because now this is where we're going to start working our neck opening. So I've left 7 chains, and when I work just before the 7th, that's where we'll start to place our decrease. So I'm going to meet you when you get there. So now we're just about at the stitch marker, and I've got two chains just before this one and this one. So I'm gonna skip the next one, which is this one, and I'll decrease. I'll go into that one, and that's gonna count as our decrease, just like that. And I'll chain 2, and I'll turn my work. So on my way going back down, I like to work into the first one. But now, since we're doing another decrease, I'm gonna skip this one and go right into the next one, and I'll continue working my way down. So I'm gonna do a decrease of about 8 rows. This is now my 2nd row, so I've got 6 more rows, and I'll meet you once I'm done with my decrease rows. So now I've done my 8 rows of decrease, which is these ones right here, and now I'm gonna start doing that chunk of normal rows, which is gonna start from here, and I'm gonna do 14 normal rows. We're not gonna do any increases, we're not gonna do any decreases, just as we did up here. So I'm gonna meet you when you've got however much you need for yours. I need about 14 rows. So now I'm done working my my rows. I'm on my increase row, and this is the row where I'm gonna have to increase 8 rows, since I decreased 8 rows this side. After I've increased those 8 rows, I'm gonna chain a 7 and work backwards. We're gonna see that as we go along. So let me just work my way up until I get to that last stitch so we can increase together. Okay, so I've got one more left. And to increase, as usual, all we do is place two half double slip stitches right in there. I'll chain 2 and I'll go on increasing for about 8 rows. So it should equal this side, just what we did here. We should get a replica of that this side. So I'll meet you once I've got my 8 rows. So I've just finished working my increase rows. These are 8 rows right here, and now I'm working my way back up. Once I reach here at the top of my work, I am gonna chain 7, which is equal to these, and I'm gonna work these even rows. So I'm gonna start working on this side, and I will meet you once I reach the top. So I've got one more stitch to work into, this one right here. So on this row we don't increase anymore since we've just done our 8 rows of increasing, but now I've reached this part right here, so I have to chain my 7. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 2 to begin my work. So into the third, I shall go in with my first row of this section. So I've got 9 rows here, so you're gonna do however many rows you have. So I'm gonna meet you once I've completed my 9 rows on this side. No more increases, it has to be the exact same as this side. I've finished working my chunk of 9 rows right here, which is exactly the same as this side. So if you remember, please ignore the chickens, we chained 15 on this side. So on this side, since we have to do the opposite, we're gonna just place your stitch marker on the 15th mark, and now we're gonna start decreasing this section right here. So I'll meet you when I've reached around there to decrease. So now that I've got 2 more stitches left, 2 more chains, 1, 2, we're not counting this one because that's where my stitch marker is in. I am gonna skip this one and go right into there. So that counts as our very first decrease. I'll chain 2, turn my work, and I will go on decreasing for 5 rows. So as usual, I like to go into the first, and then I'll skip the next and into the third. That's how I do my decrease when I'm going down. So I'm gonna do this for 5 rows. I don't know how many rows you have to decrease for, and I'll meet you once I'm done. So now I've just finished doing my decrease of 5 rows. And now it's time to start working this portion of the normal rows, which is 7 for me. I'm not sure about you. So to go on, no more decreases, just going on with a normal pattern. So right into the first, and just like that, all the way down. And you go on doing that for however many number of rows that you need to get done, and I will meet you once I've done my 7 rows. Alright, so I am done with my front panel. I've done my 7 normal rows, and now it's time to get started on the back panel. So to get the back panel done, all you're gonna do is follow the very steps we did. Just rewind the video and follow the steps we did from this to here. Once you reach the top part, which is right here, you're not going to do any decreases. You're just going to keep going. Be sure to keep the very same number of rows that you've done. So all that's going to change is this section. No more decreases. You're just going to keep the same number of rows for the whole section. And I will meet you in part 2 of the video.